Yo, what's good, YouTube? Dakota here, still in the cluttered apartment, still working on it. Haven't worked on this room a bit, so if it doesn't look different from the last video, even though it's been a few days between filming these, I've been working on the living room and the kitchen and things like that. Going to be rocking the 1D shirt for this one. It's not a One Direction review, but it is a review of the new Maxwell album, Black Summer's Night. Maxwell is a neo-soul R&B artist. He's been around for 2 decades now, is when he made his debut. I discovered Maxwell actually early last year when I bought the Embria album just on a whim, just because I've heard good things about Maxwell. I decided to buy this since it was like $5 at a used store, and was not disappointed. And Embria, so far, along with the 3 other albums that I have, out of the 4 albums of Maxwell that I own, Embria is my favorite, while there's nothing to shake a stick at with his other albums. So Black Summer's Night, part 2 of this 3-part trilogy, where he's naming the album the same thing with each release, just emphasizing a different part of it in capital letters. I was kind of excited for this because I heard a couple songs off the last part of the trilogy, thought it was pretty decent, thought it was a little bit more tame and mainstream than what Maxwell's music usually is. And so I saw this one came out and thought, hey, this will be a cool review. Let's give this Maxwell album a listen, Black Summer's Night 2. Now let's start off with some of the positives. There's a lot of organic instrumentation. There's great drum playing on this album, great bass. You know, the chemistry between the bass and the drums on this album is really nice. You know, good little keyboard and organ playing too. And when Maxwell is singing, Maxwell using his full voice sounds pretty dang good. I mean, he does have some age on him. He's starting to collect a little bit of dust, so he won't sound the same as he did on Now or Embria. But still, Maxwell is a very talented singer. So yeah, this is, you know, a very the production on this album is very good. It's pretty pleasant, pretty funky. Some tracks bringing in some horn elements that I really enjoy, most notably the 3rd track that is actually called 3 in Roman numerals on the back half of this track. And when Maxwell cues the band, they bring in some of these old kind of, maybe sounding something like Parliament's later work, Earth, Wind & Fire. Maybe actually reminds me of Give It To Me Baby by Rick James. Just nice tight horn hits and 16th, 8th notes coming in to just bring a little liveliness to the track and some funk to it. And that's something that Maxwell's always been able to do really well as a songwriter and as a composer. He's been able to have projects that are maybe not necessarily really funky, although there is a little bit of funk in all of them, but that have a really soulful jazziness to them. And a lot of the times Maxwell's music, as opposed to sounding like soul or sounding like R&B, will sound more like jazz with just him singing on top of it. Many songs, when Maxwell uses his falsetto, uses it more so as an instrument to complement the rest of the soundscape that's going on underneath him. However, on Black Summer's Night 2, at least compared to the other projects that I've listened to of Maxwell's, this album is not as dreamy and as ambient as I was hoping it would be. Hearing, you know, him play his guitar on the Unplugged album and the project, you know, that the projects that he was coming out with in the late 90s, it's just not as adventurous when it comes to, you know, just creating a spacey, lush, feel-good vibe. We get that in some moments on this album, you know, like with the main single Lake by the Ocean. That's kind of pretty, and some of the backtracks on here, most notably Hostage, which is one that I enjoy a lot on here. But it's just not as adventurous and seems a little bit more watered down and tame compared to Maxwell's other albums. Even songs on here not really going over the 5-minute mark, staying around the 4:40 something, the 4-minute mark. And usually Maxwell songs, at least from the projects I've heard, can go into 8 or 9 minutes, which sounds lengthy and monotonous for an R&B album, but Maxwell does so much and switches it up so much that it's quite entertaining and you enjoy the ride. But with this album, not happening as much. You know, another big complaint I have about this album is that while Maxwell does have a better falsetto voice than a lot of other people, I guess it's just with Maxwell's age, his falsetto isn't sounding as good as it used to, and sometimes it's a little bit tedious to listen to, and it gets kind of annoying because he just doesn't have the same range, so he kind of stays in the same area, repeating the same melodies over and over, and it's a little bit raspier than usual. In some tracks it works out, but in others it really doesn't. Like the opening track on this, his falsetto isn't as lush and as airy as it usually is. Really, when it works out is when he's doing it as a background vocal to his full voice. I mean, this is by no means a bad album. It starts out a little iffy with the opening track, but then the little tracks following that are pretty decent. It gets to the middle of the album, it comes a little bit boring, but then the back half is really more so my favorite part of the album. When you get to songs like Hostage, and especially the song Lost, which is a very modernized, bluesy, soulful track. At times Maxwell singing, almost sounding like he's on a chain gang somewhere breaking rocks, just really crying out over these nice guitars and bluesy bass riffs, and it sounds really good. The first initial listen of this project really bored me and disappointed me. Some songs did grow on me, and I understood more of what Maxwell was trying to get across, but there are still some songs like the opening track and like Gods that I don't necessarily click with, and that I'm just not, as a whole, I'm just not feeling. And even the way this album closes out, while short, and I like the shortness, it's a little bit awkward, but the upside is that the end of the last track kind of transitions into the beginning of the first track, so the album can go on repeat without sounding too awkward or stuttered. Overall, this is still a lot better than most of the music that's coming out nowadays, especially with some of his contemporaries. And some of it sounds a little bit modernized, but for the most part, Maxwell is trying to keep it very organic. He's trying to stay away from the auto-tune. He's staying away from the drum programming and the club music, which is phenomenal. And he really is a good musician, a fantastic songwriter, especially when it comes to composing the instrumentals themselves. But I think Maxwell does need to change it up a little bit and adapt to his new voice in his older age, because he just can't pull off some of the same techniques and delivery that he was doing 15-20 years ago. And that's not a shot at him. It's just he's maturing. He's changing, and he needs to bring new ideas to the table that will complement his voice and recapture that audience that loves his adventurous and smooth side. But kudos to Maxwell. I will continue to support you. I will continue to listen to your music. Again, Embria is one of my favorite soul R&B albums, just because it's so unlike anything else that's been done. It's beautiful, and as is Maxwell's music in general. Overall, on this album, I'm feeling just an even C on this. It's good. Don't get me wrong. If you enjoy Maxwell, go give it a listen. If you've never heard him, I wouldn't recommend this as an introductory album, but you might enjoy it. Fans, if you haven't heard it yet, be expecting something that is a little bit more tame, a little bit more subdued than Maxwell's usual thing. But still, you will enjoy it, I believe. And that's all I've got to say on this. Be sure to watch anything else. Let me know what else you want me to review. Logic Bobby Tarantino mixtape review should be up by now. This, that, and the other. Peace out, Girl Scout.